sweet Pulsatilla. The stereotype of Pulsatilla is the blonde, blue-eyed girl. Having said that, forget it. It's worth mentioning, not to remember that the patient has to look like this, but imagine this little girl and her character, and you've got a quick handle on the Pulsatilla type. It's a more of a feminine type, even if it's in a masculine. Even if she is in a masculine body, there is a feminine psyche at work here, and she's very changeable. That means her or his emotions can change like an April day, from sunshine to showers, and quickly. And in one way that's really appealing. In another though, and certainly for the person who's experiencing it, it's quite unsettling. And in order to settle themselves, they need to have something that they can settle on, or a person they can settle with is the most important of all. So they are very likely to make extremely strong attachments to one or maybe two other people, which is unlike phosphorus. Phosphorus will easily make attachments with many people, and none of them are that strong. So Pulsatilla makes very strong attachments to few, and they become their rocks in an ever-changing emotional landscape. And for the person upon whom Pulsatilla has alighted to be their rock, this is a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that a strong emotional attachment from another person is, well, if you have any of that in your nature, you can really understand it and like it. And anyway, it's kind of, I hesitate to say flattering, but it is kind of delightful and flattering. The negative is that you can think of them as being clingers. Wherever you go, they want to go. Whatever you do, they want to do it. And if you're doing something that that requires your close attention, you can think of them as being a dratted nuisance in which they get out of the way, which of course makes them cling all the more. So they're easily insecure, and they easily feel left out. And the word for it is forsaken. They easily feel forsaken. And in this mood they weep. Their emotions are on their heart is on their sleeve. Their emotions are on display. Weeping is a typical characteristic of Pulsatilla, and if you're being a little bit cynical, you'll say this is the way she controls those around her. By bursting into tears, then you'll oblige her needs. And if you're being empathetic, you say, poor Pulsatilla, it must be terrible to feel like this. So easily swept off your feet by a little breeze, and then you don't know where you are. In first aid prescribing, Pulsatilla is often used for the stage in any infectious disease. Let's say it's a cold, of snot, the snotty phase. They're great producers of snot, and it's green usually, yellow to green, thick, a bit like mayonnaise, and lots of it. So all this green stuff, lots of that. And eyes, it could be anywhere where there's a mucous membrane. There can be this kludgy stuff. In the acute phase of the illnesses, they're often thirstless. So you really wonder where all the green snot comes from, since they're not drinking. And kind of pitiful. They often flush up and look kind of healthy, even if they're really not. So the healthy-looking child who's actually quite sick could be a Pulsatilla. And of course the emotional changeability is really characteristic, and the weepiness, and the clinging. Another case where this is a very commonly used constitutional remedy for a constitutional state that also has this application in acutes. And once again, if you give it for the acute, you may well find that before the acute they were Pulsatilla, and in the acute they are Pulsatilla, and the remedy will do much more than just clear up the snot. Yay. Oh, one other thing I should say about them is that they often sleep on their back. Kids especially, but adults too. They sleep on their back with their arms above their heads and their feet spread wide. And that's a very open position. Open, receptive position, which, along with the blue eyes, the fair hair, and the girl, is a stereotype, or an example of this stereotype picture. Very open and therefore vulnerable. And when they come to marry, they'll often marry the very strong man. We're talking about Nux Vomica. He's a strong, zealous, action man. You can see that in marriages. The strong man with a soft woman, that kind of thing. She's the soft woman, the Pulsatilla type.